make sure you video and, you know, you can look around at the property as we talk. But to make sure you can hear me, because I do want the ones who couldn't be here today, I want you to be able to hear this. The history of Walnut Cove. Now, we're not going to do the total history of Walnut Cove, and this is where you are now, was the site of what was called the Lash Plantation. And Walnut Cove was named after that because this plantation was called Walnut Cove. And does anybody have any idea, except for Mason and probably Malachi? Does anybody have an idea why you think this plantation, let me come over, well no, you can't see me over there, why this was called Walnut Cove?
I actually don't know.
Well, anybody want to guess? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Mason. Yes. What is a cove? You might know what, I guess this is all the kids I got in. Well, one more over there. What is a cove? Anybody know? There's some place near here that would have coves all in it.
I don't know what a cove is.
Okay, you or Malachi know.
I don't know. I don't know what a cove is.
The Town Fork Creek
Yeah.
is just right down there across the road, and a little farther over is the Town Fork Creek that runs through Walnut Cove. And a cove is just a little, you know, isolated bay that would be there at the creek. It's more like a little river. So they named this plantation, and this is not the plantation house. That picture of that big ornate mansion I showed you, that was the plantation house. It was torn down in 1970, so it's been gone a while. But parts of this house were made from the plantation house. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So we're going to focus on the Lash Plantation since this was the foundation of Walnut Cove. As I said, Walnut Cove is named that because of the plantation. However, originally, you will never guess. If I said, could you guess what Walnut Cove was first named? You could never guess. Does anybody know?
I think the guy said it at the church earlier.
Did he?
Not?
Well,
We met at the church over here.
Well, what he probably said, I could be wrong, is it was called Lash because of Mr. Lash who owned the plantation. But before that, before Mr. Lash was here, it was called Hog Wallow. That is a horrible name. I mean, no offense to hogs, you know, I eat them, but Hog Wallow, because when the farmers would take their hogs to market, and they would have to go like toward the Winston-Salem area, which wasn't a city yet, but they would go through the Town Fork Creek, and the hogs would get in the creek and just wallow as they went across, so they called it Hog Wallow. But eventually it became known as Lash or Lash's Store, because the main place in town that people did business was called Lash's Store, owned by the guy that built the plantation house here. But let's go backwards. There comes Trenton, so we haven't gotten too far ahead for Trenton to here. Let's go farther back in history. Who was here before the Lashes, you think? Any ideas of who you think were the first residents of Walnut Cove? Just started, Trenton. You didn't hardly miss anything. Come on, y'all can guess this. First residents of this area?
Indians?
Da-da-da, yes. Thank you. They're Native American, the Indians as we call them, were the first residents here. Now somebody knows this. What was the name of the Indian tribe that lived around here?
Saura?
Yes, the South Stokes. Good for you. The South Stokes Sauras. So the Saura Indian tribe was actually in this area. They had camps on the Town Fork Creek just right over there, and they had bigger camps on the Dan River. And the Town Fork Creek flows into the Dan River just a mile or so that direction. So the Saura Indians were here, but even we have history going even before the Saura Indians came. Has anybody ever studied in your history and heard of a guy named Hernando de Soto? Some people call him Hernando de Soto. Anybody heard of him in history? He actually came through this area in 1540, and he found some of the Saura Indians. They had not moved here yet. He went all over the South Carolina, North Carolina border, and he found the Saura Indians kind of closer to the North Carolina, South Carolina border, and he called them the Swala or the Swale. They later became known as the Sauras. The Sauras lived here for a lot of years, and they didn't live in teepees like you would think. They lived in these dome-like houses made out of sticks and such. They raised a lot of vegetables. They ate fish from the river. They used animal bones to make their tools and stuff stuff you can imagine. They had dugout canoes, we know, because we found some remnants of those here. You can find arrowheads a lot down by the Dan River because of the Native Americans that were there. And if y'all get hot, please come under the shelter. I can move over here. I don't want y'all to get too hot out there. I know the sun is hot. Now, when the Europeans, you know, the white man, started coming to this area, they bartered with the Indians. They traded with the Saura Indians. But can anybody tell me something they brought to the Indians that was not good for the Indians?
Sickness.
Yes, disease, sickness. So, like your glasses.
I'm like Barry.
So the come in here and get cool. They brought disease. See, most of y'all have had a bad cold in your life. I hope you never have another one, but you've probably had one in the past. The Indians didn't know these diseases, so they had not had these things. And the white man brought smallpox, brought just a simple cold could kill the Indians. So the Sauras here started getting really, really sick. Their numbers went down immensely. So finally, when their numbers were very small, some Indians from farther north started attacking the Sauras. I mean, think about it. That's smart, right? You know, the Saura numbers are dwindling. So a stronger Indian tribe says, now's the time to go attack. They tried to attack, and the Sauras ended up moving. They started moving back down south where they came from. They ended up at the North Carolina-South Carolina border. And when I used to go to the beach, I would go through a little town spelled Cheraw. Anybody ever heard of Cheraw, South Carolina? That's where they went. You hear how it's similar, Saura, Cheraw. That's where the name came from. Was the Indian tribe that came from here. Now, a lot of y'all who are from here, probably not y'all Alicians, but the ones who are from this area, we always say we have Indian blood. Most of us say Cherokee. But a lot of times it's not Cherokee, it's Saura Indian blood. My family literally traced our lineage back to a Saura chief named Danapaha. Some say his name was Danapahaha. Can anybody guess what could have been named after him if I say his name a different way? Danapaha? The Dan River. The Dan River was named after a Saura Indian chief who was Malachi's 6 times great-grandpa going
I
backwards.
wonder about Donahaw.
Yes, same
That's
thing,
same thing.
yes. Which is very cool. I would like to know more about that. So that's what I wanted to tell you about the earliest inhabitants. Well, they moved away in the early 1700s, and all of a sudden white people started coming into the area saying, here's all this land, let's go settle it. The first settler, we think, was a man named Benjamin Young, and he built a literal farm/fort down on First Street. Now, does anybody know the other name of First Street?
Old Town.
It's called Old Town Road. Does that make sense? And I don't mean like that song, gonna ride, whatever, the horse down the Old Town Road. Not that one. We're talking about, that was the old part of town where Benjamin Young built his fort. Why do you think he built a fort? Somebody tell me that. It's like 1740s. Why do you think he built a fort? It was a little one. Any guesses?
Protection.
Against what? Might have to ask the adults.
The war.
That's coming very,
Oh.
very, in a few years. Yes, it is.
Well,
Mainly just the Indians. There were still marauding troops that would come into the area. They didn't live here. But they'd come in, like Cherokee would come into attack. So now we go to what Christian just said. Somebody tell me what war started in the mid-1700s. I think it ended in 1763, maybe. Anybody know what war? We watched a movie about this. You don't know?
I'm recording.
You can answer. That's a very good guess, but it's not quite,
oh,
not
the
quite
Indian.
yet.
The French Indian.
French Indian War, yes.
War of
That's-
1812.
No, that's the
That's
War
the
of
War of
1812.
1812.
Because Malachi always says, why didn't they name that war?
I'm still a little mad about that.
Puzzled about that.
I'm mad about it.
So the French Indian War is when the French said, we're going to come get a lot of the land in America. Let's get the Indians to help us fight. So they said to the Cherokee, come help us and we'll give you some of your land back. So people were living in Walnut Cove along the town Fort Creek, and the Cherokee would come in and attack. There is one entry in a journal that says that the Cherokee came and wiped out the Town Fork settlement. I don't know that I believe that, but it was written that they came and literally massacred a lot of the settlers here. But something that happened, and keep me abreast of time. Who's got something? You can tell me what time it is.
Maybe 13.
We're good. Okay, good. In 1753, the Sauras are gone by now, mostly. Benjamin Young's got his fort down there. He's been there a few years. The Moravians. Anybody ever heard of the church group called the Moravians? Hey, this is the Moravian Star. That's cool. I didn't think about that. The Moravians decided to come from, hey, Pennsylvania. Isn't that where you're from?
Yes.
So the McHugh family's from Pennsylvania. So where they're from, the Moravians said, hey, let's go down to North Carolina. We've been given 100,000 acres of land. If we'll just go settle it, it's ours. So they sent some young single men, the single brothers they called them, from Pennsylvania. In 1753, they came through this town. One of the leaders of that group, his name was Jacob Loesch. That's German. But in English, we say Lash. His name was Jacob Loesch. You see how that kind of sounds like Lash, Loesch, Lash? So Jacob Loesch Lash came through this town. They ended up crossing the Town Fork Creek right up that way, and they went to Forsyth County, and they founded a town that's still there today. Has anybody ever been to Bethabara? Anybody been to Bethabara? Well, that was founded by the guys that came right through Walnut Cove. Remember, it's not called Walnut Cove yet. It's called the Town Fork Settlement. Now, I'm going to tell y'all some very sad news. The Moravians, once they started their place out of Bethabara, they said, we need to send out missionaries. We need to preach the Word of God. Now, that's good news. But they say, and there's a cross. I just noticed there's a cross right there. They said, let's go preach the cross of Jesus. And let's go out to that Town Fork area. And you know what they said about the people here? They said that neighborhood is the darkest of them all. That is very sad. They said that the people here had wild spirits, that there were demonic spirits here, but that they needed to preach the gospel here because this neighborhood, again, was the darkest of them all. That was so sad to me. That was the 1700s. So, what we're going to do is fast forward to the 1800s, because that man who crossed the Town Fork Creek and went on to help found Bethabara, Jacob Lash, we'll call him, he never lived here in Walnut Cove, but he liked this little area. So what he said is, I'm going to get some land there. So he bought land here, but never lived here. But his grandson, who was named William A. Lash, I think it stood for Alexander, in 1830, he was 32 years old. I don't think anybody here is 32 years old. I don't know. Alicia and Christian are probably the closest to 32 years old. So, you know, they were a little younger than Alicia and Christian. So William A. Lash and his wife, she had a big long name, something like Nancy Ann Parthenia Powell. She had this long name, but they called her Nancy, some called her Ann. They moved here and built a house right about where, or close to where you see that house right now. It was not that big plantation house I showed you earlier, but it was part of it. They started that big house. It was smaller. He came and he ended up buying slaves. I think he had 28 slaves by the mid-1800s, and he started a plantation with the slaves. He raised tobacco, he raised other things. He began to make a lot of money. So he bought up, like most of what is Walnut Cove now, he owned. I had a beautiful slideshow that I stayed up making for y'all to see pictures of old houses and stores that he owned, which are still there today. But I left my computer at home, so I'm sorry. Does anybody know, right at the end of this street, or at the stoplight, Jerry Rutledge's law office? Anybody know where that is? Jerry Rutledge's law office. That was called Lash's store. He built that. It's the original building that they built in that family. He has several buildings still here. So he and his wife and their slaves here, they had 7 children. Their children, they had 4 girls, 3 boys. Their oldest boy was killed in the Civil War. He was very young, 20-something, killed in the Civil War. His second son was also William A. Lash. And he enlisted in the Civil War. He was like 18 years old, and the man enlisted in the Civil War. He fought in the Civil War. I wrote it down, but I won't bother to tell you, like the first cavalry of something in North Carolina. Don't quote me on that video. Whoever's watching, don't quote me on that. So he fought in the Civil War. He came out of it without being harmed or killed. As far as we know, he wasn't harmed. He ended up going to medical school. He went to the University of Pennsylvania for medical school, and then he graduated from medical school in New York City. He came back here and was a medical doctor wanting to open a practice, but his old dad was still here and was like, I'm paraphrasing, his dad was like, son, I need you to help me with all the business events he had so many things going on with the plantation. He owned so much land. Y'all know where our church is down here, the well? That was Lash land. All of that was Lash property, as far as we know. So, William A. Lash Jr. decided not to practice medicine, instead to become a businessman. He became a very successful businessman in Walnut Cove. He became well known in the state. He went to Raleigh as one of our representatives, became very well thought of. Now, I've heard some stuff about his dad that was not so good that I won't go into, obviously, with children here. But William A. Lash Jr. was supposedly a very honest, good man. I don't know. Didn't know him. He was, like I said, in the Civil War, he was 18 years old. So he was born in the earlier 1840s. He ended up dying in 1908 in Greensboro. He left this area in the very early 1900s, and he moved to Greensboro, where he had a brain hemorrhage and ended up dying after several strokes. I'm leaving out a lot of this. If we have time later, I'll refer to some of it. But the main thing I wanted you to know is it was Junior, William A. Lash Jr., who built that big plantation house that I showed y'all in that picture earlier. Part of it had been here, but he added to it and made it this 3-story, 18-room Victorian mansion. It had a bell-shaped little turret at the top. It had a wine cellar, a rec room, a summer house, 8 to 10 chimneys, and a water fountain. The water fountain is right there. That is still the same water fountain that William A. Lash Jr. had. His dad, William Sr., needed a way to have power here. There was no electricity yet. Does anybody have an idea of what else you can use to get power besides electricity? Windmill. Very good. Windmill. When we go to the library, the street right behind the library is named Windmill Street because of the windmill that Mr. Lash built to actually help him get water. It was going to help him pump some water before you had electricity. The railroad came to Walnut Cove in the late 1880s, and that's what incorporated the town in 1889, was we had a railroad. Once you had a railroad, you were really something. So William A. Lash Jr. was one of the men who brought the railroad to Walnut Cove. And he was on the board of the railroad. Like I said, a pretty famous guy. Now, where we are right now, this gazebo, and again, Melissa and Mason, I'm going to tell you how they're part of this family here in just a minute. Not the Lash family, I don't think. Okay. But this gazebo came from the old plantation. This is part of it, where you are right now. I already told you the fountain did. And in a minute, when I finish this, we're going to walk up just to the front door. We're not going inside. But that front door came off the plantation house. The plantation house was torn down, as I said, in 1970. And what happened, and Melissa, this is where y'all may have to help me. A man named Jerry Luther Mitchell, which is also the name of his grandpa, but was that Mason's great-grandpa?
Yeah, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, was that him? Because this was 1919.
Okay, so.
That would be his dad, right?
Yes.
Okay, brother's dad.
Everybody's names.
I know, it's
I know,
bad. It's bad around here.
we're in the South where everybody's
Jerry
got
Luther,
the same
Martin
name.
Luther, Jerry Luther, right.
Oh, yeah, that's
so Jerry,
right.
Jerry Luther,
That's-
Martin Luther was brother, and then.
Martin and Jerry.
Yeah, so
That's
it
right.
Just goes up. Yeah,
Well, okay.
So, sorry.
So the cool thing about this is to have these two here is that in 1919, remember Mr. Lash has gone to Greensboro. I don't really know, you may, what happened to this land in between. But in 1919, Mason's great-grandfather, Jerry Luther Mitchell, bought the property. He bought the house. His son, Martin Luther Mitchell, Mason's, that was his great-grandpa. The other guy was his great-great. I got you. So the first guy, Jerry Luther, was his great-great. Martin Luther grew up here. That's his great-grandpa. That was Marty's grandpa. So you see how the names go. Jerry Luther Mitchell, then Martin Luther Mitchell, then another Jerry Luther Mitchell who lives right there. And then his son is Martin, right?
Jerry Martin. Yeah,
Yeah,
Marty's
so-
Jerry Martin.
The same names have come down since a long, long time ago.
I got named after the triple bill.
See, you've got a really cool name. I like the history of that name. So, they lived here, and the house, it was so, can you imagine an 18-room house? You got to heat, you got to cool, you got to take care of. So they tore the house down, and eventually in 1970, as I said, and they built this. Now, as I said, the front door came from the old plantation house. Inside the house, which we're not going in, the mantle of a fireplace and the staircase came from the plantation. I think I was told years ago that this little angel thing right out here came from the plantation house too, I think. Okay, what's my time? How's my time looking, somebody?
It's 24.
All right, I'm gonna finish it up. We're gonna walk to the graves and then go to the library. The lady who lives here now is Mason's great aunt. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
She was a Mitchell. She's now a Rothrock, Hannah Mitchell Rothrock. So she was kind enough to let us come here today, and I really do appreciate that. This says that the bricks of that house came also from the old plantation. They look old.
I think
look
that is
is that
correct.
true?
Yeah.
That looks really, really old. Does anybody have any questions? Because I zipped through that. I had tons more that we don't have time to go over. Does anybody have a question about it before we go walk and look at this stuff?
Do I keep a recording?
Yeah, in case they have a question. Everett has a question.
Was this built in the 1980s?
If this was here in the 80s and even way back before that. Super far back before that. I wish I knew how old this is, but I don't. I tell you what, and y'all can still ask questions. Let's walk and look at that fountain. And we're not on a real strict time schedule. We're missing some people, so the pottery won't take as long.
Well, there's older,
Oh, I know it's taken.
Francis, Dan.
So not that one. That one over here. Is it a one made out of wood? Yeah. That's not that.
But you know that family went
I'm
down with
recording.
Kinsman, but at Old Salem, right?
And I'm starting to say our family, but it was my family who made the coffee pot, the big coffee pot out there. Okay. From the Moravian and stuff. Hey, y'all, why don't y'all go, like, stand right here, and Malachi, here, let me take that. All you 4-H are standing in front of the fountain, and I'll take your picture.
Still recording.
That's fine. I can take a picture while we record. So everybody stand there in front of the fountain.
The one that was right here was huge before they actually cut that one.
And I can't see real well. All right, slide in a little bit farther. There you go. Joshua, Eva, y'all stand. There you go.
Joshua.
A little bit closer, Joshua. All right, there we go. Everybody smile at us. I'm done, but I don't know if they are. Let them get a picture. And I am keeping the video going. I hope it is. All right, let's walk right here and look at the door before we walk on down. Now, don't go right up to it. And in fact, why don't y'all all stand up there and we'll just get a bunch of pictures of y'all with all this historic stuff. So everybody stand on the porch and I'll take your picture with that door. Which is a very cool old door.
It is, isn't it?
I love it. All right, when y'all get up there, turn around, smile at me.
Taller people in the back, little people in the front.
There you go.
Yes, don't block Trenton. There you go. There, oh, perfect. All right, everybody ready? Y'all look at all of us. Keep looking here. I should have kept my shoes on. All right, let's head this way. Actually, I need you to get in front of the gazebo one time to get a picture with the gazebo. That azalea is so pretty. I'm so glad you brought him. You know what?
Is that in the same place or did they move it?
Now that I don't know, Christian. Melissa may know. If they move the gazebo. And the bricks. We want to know. Melissa, you don't know about this walkway, do you? What did I just step on? All right, kiddos. All right, let's see. Mason, you too, because you're the bloodline. Well, not the Lash bloodline, but. All right, I'm going to back off and take one farther away. Everybody look this way. 1, 2, 3, hold it. Oh, that's a really good picture. Don't stop. Y'all stay there. If y'all want, anybody want a picture, or y'all good? Y'all need a picture, or you good?
You're gonna post them, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to keep my battery down so I can still do that.
I wish I had asked more about that.
Down so I can't really see them.
I can't see this. I
I
can't.
need you to send that stuff to me. From church and remember he was gonna email
Okay, let's look at the graveyard.
the history of the church.
Who was? All right, y'all, let's go to the graveyard. Who was?
The Episcopal church.
Oh, he never did. I never got anything. But I'm glad you reminded me because I'd totally forgotten. All right, let me show y'all where the graveyard is, which Mason can lead the way. He knows where it is. We're going to go right through that little fence right there. All right, y'all, right to follow Mason. Follow the leader.
I don't know where to go.
Just go through to the left of that fence.
I don't know where.
You'll see it when you get out there. And people coming. And Trenton, I'm so glad you got to come. This is interesting stuff, to me anyway. Kids are probably like, we don't care about this, but I think it's fascinating. Thankfully, they mowed right around the graves. It's interesting.
That's been here as long as I can remember.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they mowed right around it. Don't get, here it is. I thought it was here. Here it is.
This is not much of a graveyard.
The grave was broken.
A lot of these are broken. This one's broken. Oh, that thing's really in the ants.
All right, guys. This is the old, well, yeah, I'm not going out there. This is the old Lash graveyard. And if you want to just, I'll give you like 5 minutes just to look, and then we got to head to the library. So if you want to just look around at the graves, help yourself.
One grave was broken. One grave was broken.
Unfortunately, they're just about all broken.
Oh, William Lash.
That's it. See his birth date. Do you see his date?
December something.
But year, do you see a year?
December 27, 1877.
Well, that's the dad. He died. That's when he died.
Oh, July 25th,
Yes.
1798.
Yes, that's him. This is William Lash Sr. That's his gravestone. Does anybody see Junior's gravestone? It's here somewhere.
Just big block.
I don't
You're not
know.
supposed to turn it over.
Yeah, let's don't.
About 100% of these big graves are broken.
I don't know who that is.
Who is it?
Who is that?
I don't know. Does it have a name?
A lot of these don't have names on them. They're just big
Oh.
marble pieces.
Well, rats.
Died in 1849.
18. That was their daughter. She died, I think, at 9 years old, maybe.
I feel like there's more.
I think you're right.
I think if you go in over there.
I think you're exactly right.
Don't hold me to that. 'Cause
I think William Lash Jr. is over there somewhere.
We're in the unknown.
It's a shame
What does that say? I know. 18. What does that say? I think that was his. That was the name of the one that died in the Civil War, but that date doesn't look right. That's too late, isn't it, for the Civil War?
John, someone's over there.
There's a John.
There's a John right here.
Oh, I bet that's the son that died in the Civil War.
Who's this? Who's that guy? Who's that guy?
That's it.
1862.
Good job, Trenton. That's it. That's it. The guy that died in the Civil War,
He was
his
21.
gravestone's right here.
He was 21.
21 years old, Trenton says.
Mason said this was all big pond. No, back there.
There's a pond back there.
Well, close.